Did you ever wonder what does a typical day look like for a product manager? In this podcast, we dig deep into what a product manager does on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, on a quarterly basis, and a yearly basis. So don't miss this podcast. Watch this podcast to the end. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, Everything Product. We talk about insights on the latest technology with a product mindset. I'm Sid Saladi, product manager working for Best Buy.
Hi everyone, this is Phani. I'm a product manager at Intuit.
Hey everyone, I'm Srinath. I work as a product operations manager at Twilio.
Hello everybody. So we have a very interesting topic today. So we're going to talk about typical day of a product manager, then look at what a product manager does on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, quarterly, and yearly basis. So this is going to be a very interesting topic. So tune in to watch the complete podcast here. So I'd say a typical PM does a lot of different things in a day. So it could be categorized into strategy, execution, and collaboration. But we'll dig deep into some of these things, what a PM does. And what we do here. So, Phani, why don't you give us how does your typical day look like?
Yep. So my day varies a lot. I think in general for product managers, right? There is no one specific thing that we have every day that we do. It varies a lot depending on what we are trying to do. But if I have to tell typical things that I do on a daily basis, the very first thing that I start with is data. So every day we get a report of our Tableau dashboards to see how our products has performed in the last day or so. And in general, since we know how our products do, we have trends that takes place in our product to see, okay, on a daily basis, we have a conversion of, let's say, 55%. How is that varying on a daily basis? Similarly, we also track trends in terms of errors. Like, let's say we have an drop rate for a customer at this point at a certain percentage. We try to see whether the same thing is continuing or are there any new errors that is coming up on a daily basis. So this is very first thing that I do. And if in case I find any issues here, I create jiras to my engineering team, or I send emails to the appropriate stakeholders to say, hey, is there something going on here? I'm seeing a sudden jump in terms of traffic, sudden jump in terms of the drop rates, etc. After that, I start with my chores of the day, looking at my Slacks to see if someone has messaged me. Is there anything important that I need to respond? Is there any blockers that I need to address in terms of engineering work, design teams, or data teams, etc.? And then typically I go about meetings. My day is usually like 60 to 70% meetings. I want to reduce that, but typically we have that. And within these meetings, I typically start with like stand-ups that goes around like 9:30 ish. We understand like how the current sprint planned work is going on. Is there any blockers for the team that I need to address? Is there any questions that the team has that I need to answer, etc.? And then it'll have continued meetings, and those meetings would vary based on like let's say there could be some customer interviews that I planned. I go about like defining the questions for that, thinking about like how I should ask those questions, how I should plan for those questions, etc. And given that I'm a platform product manager, I also have several meetings with individual products, like let's say Mint, Credit Karma, QuickBooks, etc. Understanding what they're trying to do in the upcoming quarters or in the upcoming sprints, that will eventually define my backlog.
Yeah, that sounds like a busy day. Funny. So maybe Srinath, do you want to go next and give us how does your typical day look like?
Yeah, as Funny said, it can vary. And depending on the type of work that you are doing and the stage of the product that you are building as well. In a typical day, for me, it involves, monitoring the product health dashboard or whatever the portfolio that I have to see how my product is performing. Am I seeing any drop in the users? Am I seeing an increase in adoption, such as those? And in addition to what Funny said earlier, like monitoring any big escalations, for instance, take say one separate escalations like security, privacy. So trying to make sure those are addressed quickly. And as like Funny said, like my day is occupied with a lot of meetings as well. 50 to 60% of my calendar is occupied with meetings. One thing which I also do in addition is, I mean, having relationship with our GTM stakeholders to make sure I'm aware about the latest things that are going across the industry and what they're hearing from the customers. That really helps me to be updated with the latest knowledge, latest trends, latest pain points that customers are talking about. So I can make sure I keep those in mind when I'm trying to build a product feature. Um, in addition, I mean, like Funny said, I also have a lot of meetings with our engineering teams to make sure they are on track and kind of and address any escalation, sorry, any questions. Uh, so, and when, if I am, for instance, if I'm closer to launching a product, probably I will have a go to market readiness meeting where I need to work closely with a lot of our frontline teams as well, in addition to our product, engineering, stakeholders, and all that stuff to make sure we are ready to launch a product. So, depending on the stage we are in, it can vary, but these are some of the stuff that I generally do. Anything that
Yeah,
you would like to add to them?
yeah, I know. Whenever there are product launches, it gets really busy. I can actually relate to that. But I think it's kind of similar. But so what I basically start my day with three different things. The first thing is I try to look at all the things which I have to get done, and pick the top three tasks. So I basically prioritize all the tasks on using a framework called LNO, which is like separating tasks with leverage, right, which gives us 10x output, right? So these are the most important tasks, and tasks which are like, okay, neutral, you'd get done, but these are just moving the ball. And there's also overhead tasks which are like draining your energy. So I try to make sure I pick the top three tasks which I get done. So that's the first thing I do. The second one is I look at all, we have user forms where users talk about different problems they have, all suggestions and all of that stuff. So I skim through all of those channels to see if there's any inspiration or any things that I have to consider and put it in the backlog. So that's the second thing I do. And the third thing is look at the data, how the trends are, and how they change weekly, daily, and things like that. And I think this helped me a lot, because looking at that, sometimes there are details that you actually look into to that can help you to improve your product better. So once these three things are done, that's when my normal day starts. And it's all agile ceremonies, right? There are a lot of stand-ups. I don't attend stand-ups, but sometimes when there's an update to the team which you have to give, saying, okay, I have a customer interview, engineering team, would you want to join? Please join. And this is at this time, and so on. So for those updates, I join. And there are also brainstorming sessions we have. So these brainstorming sessions are for products and features that are going to come in the next quarters. And also we basically go into a room and try to tackle a problem, come up with a solution, and then create jiras and all for that. So brainstorming sessions are another piece I have. And there's also collaboration meetings where you have to collaborate with other departments on things that have to be done to get or ship features. So that's some other meetings which I attend. And I make sure I attend all the demos which happen for the engineering team. So because I think demos are the ones which actually give you how the feature looks like, and is it actually solving the problem or not. So I feel that a product manager's role is critical in that point, where he can actually point out if it's actually addressing the problem which the user came to him or he went in and discovered. So that's also an important place I try to be at. And there's also I try to make sure if there are any stakeholder meetings or high stake meetings, I make sure I block at least 20 minutes before that meeting so that I prepare for those meetings. I feel that the more prepared you are, the more effective the meetings are. So I know these are some of the things which I do. But overall, I'd say the tasks depend on, as Srinath said, the stage of the product. So if you are actually shipping features and all, the typical day looks different. But if you are launching a product, right, a day kind of is completely different, where you are talking to client services team to educate them about the product. You're talking to sales to giving them sales demos. You're talking to the customers to get feedback. So there's a lot of different things which you are trying to do. And also when there is ideation sessions, right, which is in the start of a product, right? I think that's a complete different ball game where we have like day-long workshops that go the complete week, where we say this is a problem which we want to attack, we brainstorm that, come up with different solutions, pick one solution, prototype, and all of that stuff. That's like complete day blocked, where you got to come up with some solution at the end of this week. So this is how my typical day looks like. But as you all said, right, it's mostly meetings, but I try to make sure I don't join the meetings which I can't add value. So that makes me free up more time and do more deep work rather than just sitting in meetings. Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of different things. It's difficult for people to unpack so many things, right? Maybe we'll first try to pick ones, right? So we do a lot of different things, but there will be one favorite thing which I like to do, or Phani likes to, or Srinath likes to do, and one thing which you don't want to do. So maybe I'll start with that question with you, Srinath. So what is the most favorite thing which you would want, which you would like to do, and what is the least favorite thing which you would like to do?
So my favorite thing is brainstorming, playing with, doing an collaborative exercise with different people, try to get their kind of viewpoint on what they think about the pain point probably that we are solving and how we are solving. I really like that, group exercise with so many people. When you pick people from different backgrounds, it really helps you to understand individual viewpoints, and you're looking from different lens, not just biased towards only product view or engineering view. So when you have so many people, it really helps you to think out of box as well. So I really enjoy doing a brainstorm exercise, and I use Figma. It's a pretty good tool for doing any of this exercise for anyone who would like to, do more of brainstorming. Uh, the least interesting for me is probably when I'm trying to justify, too much when it's not needed. As a PM, obviously prioritization is one of the most important factors. And when you're trying to fight for your product feature, and sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it may not make sense for you to prioritize, but sometimes when it makes sense, you would like your product feature to be prioritized, but because of bandwidth, not enough bandwidth, your feature may not get prioritized. So kind of those debates, probably, when it's not necessary, probably that's where, I will say my least favorite thing to do, because I feel like when we build so much justification and your feature still doesn't get prioritized, so I feel like, oh, okay, it's like a waste of time.
So you're saying that problem solving is your the skill you like, right? And you do that through Figma. So I've used Miro before, but how is Figma similar to Miro? You have like
It's very
whiteboards, you do post-its and all of that stuff similar?
Yes, it's very similar to Miro, and it's just like, yeah, it's basically you pull the sticky notes, and you can create like kind of different, flow charts and all that stuff as well, the way you like. It's very similar to Miro or InVision as well. I think InVision people use more for like kind of creating mocks than collaboration, but it's pretty close to Miro.
It
Okay,
varies for us
perfect.
also. We actually use Figma to create prototypes and stuff, and we use
Ooh.
Mural to use to do the collaboration and stuff, especially
Yeah,
to
we,
like
we,
create
we use Figma
stickies.
for
Yeah.
prototypes, and completely Miro for all the brainstorming. But Miro has so I love Miro, no offense, but the problem is, right, I have so many boards, but I find it difficult to find information. There's no overall search. I guess there's only individual board search where you can search for things, but there's no overall search where you can search across boards. So maybe they'll add that feature someday. So that's nice. So
Yeah.
what about you, Phani? What is your most interesting
The funny
thing
part
you
was,
like most?
yeah, the funny part was I like the exactly opposite thing what Srinath told. Srinath was like, "Hey, I love to talk to people and then bring everyone together to like brainstorm, right? I like think tanks." So I love to just sit for a couple of hours. Don't talk to anyone. Don't look at Slacks. Don't look at emails. Nothing, and just write. So let's say if I want to start a new feature, or if I want to start a new product in itself, I just sit, start thinking about like what I want within the product, start thinking about how that user journey would look like, what are all the steps the customer would do, and just type. And then obviously, like whenever I don't have enough details, I try to do research at that time, like Google, find the products, do competitor analysis to see what exactly they are doing, what kinds of APIs are available, what kinds of data is something that I need to provide, how do I need to structure it so that it's a very easy way for the partners to consume, etc. So I love the think time. And my least favorite thing to do on a daily basis is probably like planning meetings. Sometimes what happens is you might have to plan for the entire quarter, then you will have like 10 people, 15 people sitting in a meeting, going through all the initiatives that we have from all the product managers, looking at cross product prioritizations, looking at engineering team capacities, etc. I believe this is a waste of time, but it's still needed, because if you don't do that, then your quarter won't be productive. But those are some of the meetings which you're just sitting for some time, where you might not be adding too much value for it, but still you will have to do that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So complete contrasting, but I'm more lean towards Srinath here. So for me, what I like is I like more about more on strategy things, right? Like where we all sit into together in a room where we do workshops and try to ideate and get to a solution. So I actually like doing those sessions also, where I moderate it, and somehow at the end, right? So it's magical where everybody's comes in. We have a problem statement, but everybody's confused what to expect and don't know, but somehow magically you end up coming with a solution out of that session. So I love doing that, and then bootstrapping that, and putting that building the initial MVP, and then putting it out and seeing how people react to it and all of that stuff. So that's my first favorite thing. A second favorite is doing customer interviews. I don't know why, but maybe podcasting is also something we all like it the same way. I like interviewing customers and picking their brains. So these two are the things which I like a lot. The things which I don't like are, I would say, uh, things that I have to do for the sake of process, right? So there are a lot of different things which you have to do just for documentation purposes, and also for filling out things, and this has to be in certain format and all of that stuff. Somehow I try to avoid those things, but you have, as a PM, you have to make sure you do all the check marks, right, to ship the product and all of that stuff, and that exists in bigger organizations. So this is something which is a little hard for me. And also one other thing I would maybe say is I'm an introvert, so talking to others doesn't come naturally to me. So I have to force myself sometimes to do all of these things. So that's also something which I don't like, but I would want to do and improve myself at. Sure. So I think, yeah, sorry.
That's actually a funny thing, Sidhu. So I've heard this from like multiple product managers, right? A lot of people say, hey, I'm an introvert, but am I fit for a product management role? But the funny part is many of us are like introverts.
Yep, that's right.
But when it comes to work, we do a lot of things that typical introverts doesn't do. Like we as product managers, right? Bring in probably like tens of people, or like sometimes probably like the tens could be like 20s or 30s, which is a large audience. Bring all of them together in a single room, and then converse with all of them, make sure they understand what we are trying to do, and bring all of them into a single point of view to say, hey, this is exactly what we are trying to do. And so answer to that is anyone can be a product manager, right? No one has to be a like super extrovert to say, hey, I love talking to people. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, that's yeah, man, I can absolutely relate to that, right? Even when I meet new people, I take time to mingle with them. But if I'm with my regular friends group, right, I'm more free to talk with them and all of that stuff. But when you work, that is different, it changes. So yeah.
Not just that, one more thing there, right? So typically when you work with the team, so if I think about my team right now, I don't think twice to like ask a question. Like a lot of people have that thought process to say, I'm asking a dumb question. But when it comes to the team, like you are working with them on a day-to-day basis, you probably are spending more time with your team than your wife some days.
Yeah.
So in that
Yeah.
case, you don't feel that thought process to say, I have to ask that question. Okay, what would that person feel? They'll be like, dude, that's the dumbest question that you have ever asked. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Like we have the rapport with the team. Yeah.
And to add to that, Funny, so I think a product manager cannot be an expert in all the different areas. So there are a lot of dumb questions which you have to ask, otherwise you don't understand the context, and sometimes you're actually pulled into meetings suddenly where you don't have context. You have to ask the questions. Okay, what is this all about? What are you guys even discussing? Because I think engineers and all talk at a different level, right? Because they have a better understanding and they can understand each other's terms, but sometimes when you don't have that context, it's tough to ask. So I think it's good to be dumb sometimes as a product manager.
Yeah, in
Actually, I
my
want to
perspective,
add
there is no dumb question. Good.
I want to add one last thing there, right? So when I joined when I joined into it, one of the things my manager used to do is like, hey, I'm new. Can you explain me how this product works? Okay, he has been with my team for the last 1.5 years, and he still asks the question. But that's a very good way to like get input from people, because you might be in the company or you might be in the team for more than a year, but you might be new to that feature or you might be new to that product. So putting that thought to say, hey, I'm new here would ease you out in asking any question, and it would ease the other people out as well. So because they'll be happy, it's their product, they'll be happy to explain how it's going, they'll be happy to explain what needs to be done, etc. So that's an easy conversation to like get input from people.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a typical day, right? So we talked about a lot of wide variety of things a product manager does. So maybe let's zoom out a bit and give more context to people of what a product manager does on a weekly basis, right? What are the things he has to keep track of, and what are the different things he does and all. So Funny, why don't you get us started and maybe give us an idea of that?
Yep. Maybe I'll put it into three different things, right? The first one is your backlog. The second one is your planning. Third one is demos. I think everything else we do around will bring it back to this. So the reason I tell that is the first one, let's take backlog. As a product manager, the most important thing a product manager delivers as an artifact is a backlog, a clear and concise backlog that an engineering team can use to build the products. So we typically have a backlog grooming session where I take to the team to say, hey, these are all the things that we are doing. How do we split it into stories, etc. And I do a lot of meetings for that to prepare that backlog, to give enough details. We create something called a one pager, which basically have a lot of details that clearly tells an engineering team, hey, this is what exactly that I want to look at when I look at the finalized product. The second one is planning. Since we work on like 2 week sprints, engineering team needs to clearly understand, hey, this is our priority for this current sprint. So there is some kind of planning that's needed to go for a planning meeting as well, because we need to think about like what are all the things that we need to do from a business standpoint, what are all the things that we need to do from a technical standpoint, what are all the things that we need to do in terms of like handling errors, handling any production issues, etc. That typically goes into our planning for a sprint. And the last one is the demos, because a very important thing a product manager needs to push for is a clear and concise demo of everything that happened in the sprint. Engineers might have a thought process to say, hey, I worked only on a backend product, or I worked on a very simple thing that in the sprint just to like fix a bug or like fix a few bugs, etc. But demo for each and everything is really important, because a product manager, we love to see code, right? So if someone worked on a backend issue, like show me the code. I would love to see like how you built it, how you're thinking through that, etc. The same way, if you have worked on like bug fixes and stuff, would love to understand like how you fixed it, how you understand the impact of that issue, etc. Because we don't do anything that like very minute, right? It's actually impacting a customer, so that's what we are trying to do. Doing this not just helps a product manager, it helps the engineering team a lot, because they themselves might not be talking to each other across all the features that they're doing. But once they do a demo, everyone in the team understands everything that's happening through the sprint. And if they are interested to like participating one thing or the other, they can come and join other initiatives or like do cross collaborations, etc. So these are the typical three things that I plan on a week.
Yeah. Speaking about demos, right? You'll also end up in situations where you are thinking or communicating to build something, and there is something that is built. So this is a good sign, right? Where the cost of failure is very less. In the demo, you actually get to see what is being built. So I think that's a very good point. How about you, Srinath? So what does your typical week look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo the activities what Phani mentioned, but in addition to that, what I also have is a weekly business review, which where I kind of, I mean, write a detail about what happened in the last week, what are the open issues, what are the risks, where we have made progress, what are the things that we still need to do. Kind of do a weekly business review with our core team who is working on the feature, so they don't need to, I mean, look for email or Slack messages because they can get lost. So having that review with all key stakeholders and core team really helps me to reach the milestone and make sure everyone is on the same page. So that is in addition to what Fanny said that we do. In addition to that, we have our sprints. Our sprints are usually 2 week sprint. It's not weekly sprint, but it's a 2 week sprint. So we participate in the sprint, I mean, review meetings. What the user stories that probably the engineering team has developed to see is that right? I mean, does that meet the right acceptance criteria that we discussed about, such as those? So on a weekly basis, typically it involves, I mean, the sprint reviews, the weekly business reviews, in addition to what Fanny mentioned.
Sure. Yeah. So maybe I'll add a couple of points here. So I think on a weekly and a bi-weekly basis, the most important thing for us would be to prioritize, I guess, right? So that's where Fanny was mentioning the grooming sessions, right? Where we say, okay, we sit and see, okay, what stories are ready, what are not ready, and what has to be prioritized to, maximize the impact. So I think grooming sessions are the top ones. And then I also look at a roadmap to see how the timeline looks like, because roadmap is basically a guideline to what are we releasing and not releasing, and then making sure updating that will keep all the customers up to date and briefed about what to expect next and what to prepare and all of that stuff. And I think this also helps different teams who are also collaborating, right? Sales, client services, and all of that, to know when they have to trigger and start working on their stuff if this specific feature works. So making sure we do the grooming sessions and also update the roadmap to reflect what has happened in the 2 weeks are the two primary things. And the third thing which I try to do is review OKR. So OKRs are objectives and key results. So we have OKRs which we finalize before the quarter. So these OKRs are basically helping you move your step forward towards the vision or mission what you have. And each of the objectives have like 2 or 3 key results. So I make sure if are we moving in the right direction for the key results or not. So let's maybe take an example, right? We want to improve efficiency by 10%, right? And we have like 10 stories that has to be done in this quarter to improve the efficiency by 10%. So if there were 2 stories that were done this quarter, right, did it move the needle front or not? If not, we have to make sure we reflect that in the backlog grooming to do something else or change the strategy to make sure we move towards the right direction in the OKRs. So yeah, I think these 3 are the top things, like grooming sessions, roadmaps, OKRs, and I would also add demos, as Fanny was saying. So yeah, I think these would be the typical things which we would do on a week to week basis. So I think these are all good ceremonies, right? We are saying how does a typical day look like, and then we zoomed out and said how does a week look like, and then maybe we'll even zoom out further on and look at what do we do on a quarterly basis. So maybe I'll start with you, Srinath, now. So how does your typical quarter look like? What are the different ceremonies that go into what do you check, and how do you update everything?
Yeah, and a quarterly planning basis. So essentially, I mean, when I look at quarter, first I start with what my quarterly roadmap looks like. What are the different things that I need to execute? What are my top priorities? How I can communicate my priorities with the stakeholders, because I'm not the only one person who's driving. I work with so many people in getting those priorities done. So, I mean, having a good list of priorities, having a good plan to execute that on a quarterly basis is pretty important. At the same time, communicating with stakeholders, making sure, I mean, they understand that is very important. So that is one of the important things that I do on a quarterly basis. In addition to that, I mean, we also have a quarterly business review. So this is where you bring your like top leadership at VP or sometimes even SVP level to give insight into, I mean, how the quarter went through for your product portfolio. It's very important for them to have insight into what I mean our team is building, because you may have dependencies, I mean, which are way up that you cannot solve. That's where your leadership will chime in and can help you with any dependencies that you may need to solve. So it's pretty important to I mean, get insight and get feedback and buy-in from them. So you're making sure you're heading the right direction and ask for help as needed. The third thing, which I also do on a quarterly basis, is, I mean, understanding our customer satisfaction scores, what our test customers are saying, because customer satisfaction scores don't change like on a week to week basis or month to month basis much, but you can see some good shifts or trends on a quarterly basis. So that will really help you to understand, oh, did you build the right product? Okay, if you did not build, then what are the opportunities? So that's where you get a lot of these insight from customer satisfaction scores, their anecdotes, such as these. So overall, I would say, I mean, quarterly planning, I mean, when I look at the quarter, I start with kind of the priorities, what my roadmap, communicate that, get their buy-in. And then after that, I mean, it all starts the week and day activities that we earlier discussed about. And at the end of the quarter, I mean, sharing kind of the results, what happened, to make sure we give insight and at the same time get feedback and move on to the next quarter and um, address the additional opportunities.
Yeah, so I think even though it sounds simple, there is a lot of collaboration that goes in, right? Because there's a lot of buy-in and a lot of people you have to talk to make sure you agree upon what you're trying to do and then get through and then present things and all. So that makes sense. How about you, Funny?
Very similar. The way I would put it is I would bucket this into two things. The first one is marketing, and the second one is road mapping. So, as a product manager, one of the most important things that you need to do is market your products. Because many times what happens is you might be building something really important, but without your knowledge, another product manager might be building the exact same thing that you're building. Because ideas are common, but execution is something that's really important. So one thing that we try to do a lot is market. So whatever we try to do, not just the demos internally, we try to give demos externally as well. Like whenever we find a forum where we can go to much larger audience, it could be our platform, it could be multiple platforms, or it could be like multiple products. We try to set up a time for our team to go there, probably give a demo for like 15 minutes to 20 minutes and get all the questions answered. And we also do similar things like talking to leaders, like explaining them to say, hey, this was our target in terms of reaching a metric from here to here. And then in order for us to reach that metric, we plan for these initiatives. And this is how that initiative has been progressing throughout the month, throughout the quarter, etc. And we do a lot of other marketing sessions as well. It could be like posting messages on Slacks. We do like much broader Slack messages with detailed inputs to say, hey, this is the customer problem. This is what we have done. This is the results that we are seeing. These are the experiments that we have done, and learn through it. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. We also add videos. We also add screenshots, etc. And that's what we do, like multiple ways to like market our products throughout the month and throughout the quarter, so that everyone knows what's happening within our platform, our products and stuff. And the second one is road mapping, right? When we started the quarter, we typically say that, hey, this is how my roadmap is going to look like. Or when we started the year in itself, we would say, hey, this is how my roadmap is going to look like. How is the roadmap performing on a monthly basis? Are we seeing issues? Did we have any further learnings that we want to tweak our roadmap, or we want to add anything else to it so that we can improve our metrics in a better way? We continually look at that on a monthly basis together. Like we'll have probably like engineering leaders, like product leaders, data leaders, etc. Come together. We go through that roadmap to say, hey, this is how we are doing. This is what we want to tweak. This is what we want to add, and then continually improve that, and then bring it back to the engineering teams.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
then
Marketing is a very important component there.
that reminds me of another thing that probably I should have told is we also do quarterly newsletters and quarterly lunch and learn sessions for similar to the goals that Fanny was talking about. How do you market your features? Because that way we can talk about our features with so many people. When you have lunch and learn sessions, we saw pretty high attendance, people coming and learning about our product features, and they also, if there are any, I mean, cross paths, probably we can uncover there as well. In addition, the quarterly newsletters as well that we frequently do, and we get a lot of, replies if they find something interesting or someone is already working on something. Probably there is some dependency somewhere that we need to be aware, and that really helps us to understand. Uncover any potential unknowns as well. So yeah, so those are the two additional things that we do, and we have seen some good response there.
Sure. Yeah. So kind of similar on similar lines. So I'd say the first important thing, again, I go back to OKRs, right? So OKRs is like end of a quarter. What we do is we try to see if the OKR is completed or not. So normally, you could say that if you actually do achieve all the KRs, you're not stretching enough. And if you don't achieve like too many, or there's something wrong in the planning, so you either say it's a success or no, right? So I think we evaluate that retrospect and then go for the next planning. And when we plan OKRs for the next quarter, it actually starts 1.5 months 2 months before, where you try to put in all the different things, get them in, validate the ideas, do experimentation, and also get the PRDs ready, then make sure all of this is packed in and is ready for review, and then you start the quarter. So these two are the most important things we do on a quarterly basis. And the third one is roadmap, right? So I think roadmap, we do it on a monthly basis and a bi-weekly basis, where the features and what value we are providing to the customer keeps changing, and we keep adjusting dates based on how the teams ship and all. The third one on the marketing side, we call them roadshows. So roadshows are things where each team comes out, and basically they call in all the stakeholders, all the users, and everybody. They can come and sit. So the team comes in and presents all the things that have went into the product and all the work which I've done. And also this is also an opportunity to recruit people who could do beta testing and all of that stuff, right? Where we do focus groups and all of that stuff. So this is a place where we showcase all of that stuff, I'd say. So yeah, I think these are the most important things we try to do, and all tie everything back to whatever we want to achieve in the next 1 or 2 years. Okay, so yeah, I think day, week, and a month and a quarter. And I think let's maybe go zoom out further more and then get into yearly planning. I think yearly planning looks a lot different than what we do on all of these things, right? So if we want to start, right, like what does your typical year look like, Funny? Like what are the different activities you do?
I think one thing that we do to plan for a year is actually realizing what we want to do. Some of this comes top down and some of this comes bottom up, because it's not like someone is dictating what you want to do. But if someone is at a director level, VP level, etc., they might have like a much bigger thought process than yours. So what typically happens is we have something called what do you say, a 6-pager or a 3-pager, that into its terminology. But basically what that's telling is this is our vision for the year. Our VPs and directors are also very hands-on. They create this document and they give their thought process to say, hey, this is how we are looking at for the entire next year. We want to focus on, let's say, taking our product from just being one product centric to a product that can be utilized by like 5 different customers. Or we are thinking about our APIs being uh, just generic to one product to a standardized API that can be utilized across multiple products. The same way with data, same way with customers, same way with developers, etc. So they look at different streams to say, hey, these are our top level big bets for the year. And that trickles down to like several products and several product managers. And then that's what we use to like to define our own strategies, our own roadmaps and stuff. And we spend a lot of time just understanding that and at the same time defining that. So this is something that we do on a monthly basis so that it helps our overall year. And then we put artifacts such as the detailed roadmap that basically tells the first 2 quarters, which is a very solid plan to say this is exactly what I'm building. Q3 and Q4 typically like very abstract, and those will get filled as we come closer to it. And then we also define metrics, like Sidhu was telling, right? OKRs. We define clear metrics to say, hey, this is how we are currently ending our current year, and then by the end of next year, this is where we want to look our metrics to be. It could be a starting point where we want a few external developers to use our products, or it could be a more standardized metric where you typically say, hey, we have 50% success rate here. We want it to go to 60% by next year.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. I think yearly planning actually is a mix of a lot of different initiatives from the company side, department level, and your team level. So you have to make sure you cross all the T's while you do all of that planning, right? Yeah. So what about you, Srinath? How does your year look like?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think yearly planning is probably one of the most important aspect for any, road mapping or what you want to achieve next year, because that kinds of sets the baseline, what you want to do in a quarter, what you want to do in a monthly, what you want to do in a weekly or a daily and all that stuff. So if we don't have a good yearly planning or roadmap in place, that can create churn across a lot of teams, creates frustration, and probably you'll not be able to deliver anything if you don't have a good year plan. So just want to start with that. So typically our yearly planning, based on my experience in different organizations, in Amazon, I saw it was more, tops down and bottoms up, where we try to meet together, kind of understand what our top leadership priorities are, and what we think in addition that we should also focus, and we kind of merge at one place and come up with a final list of priorities. And our typical yearly planning primarily happens, a little in the later half of the year, where we tend to focus more on capturing ideas from various customer facing teams or stakeholders, and come up with some framework that probably will help you to win in the next 3 to 5 years, so let's suppose, or next year, whatever it is. Come up with a strategy, and once you identify in the strategy what are the different choices that you want to make, define those strategies, validate those strategies, come up with one pagers, go and present it to leadership, but to get their buy-in. And if it makes sense, then that's a part of your roadmap. If not, then it's not. So we take the list of top priorities from leadership. Once we that's at a very high level. For instance, it can be just like privacy. That's it. But you need to define what those individual things that you need to do within privacy in order to keep your product moving. So for that, you write a lot of this one pagers and all that stuff, and you come up with an initiative that you need to target the following year and make sure people are bought into that. So yeah, and also we are also measured similar to the OKRs that you guys just mentioned. So that is pretty important as well. So we are delivering tangible stuff and also able to measure our results. So that's how we do as well.
Yeah, strategy, I think it's not easy, and it's an iterative approach, right? You keep doing it, and there's a lot of experimentation, validation, and talking to people that goes into it. Well, my typical, I would say for me, right, I would say I would maybe start at the company level and say, okay, consumer the preferences and the way how consumers behave keep changing every every 6 months, every 3 months. So I think based on how all of this buying habits and all of that change, the overall company initiatives tend to change sometimes, right? Sometimes you have it logged for 3 years, but sometimes you have to change when there's a disruption in the market. So these top down initiatives trickle down to department level initiatives, and there are also team level initiatives. So I think the first exercise what we try to do is calibrate all of this to make sure that align to what we try to do at the team level, right? So make sure all of the initiatives are aligned, and make sure we have the right initiatives in place and all of that stuff. And also I'd say at this point, if certain segments have the funding or not, do we have improved funding or not, and all of that stuff, that actually varies, and based on that we come up with new initiatives and all. And I think after these discussions, right, there are opportunities which you identify where you could actually create a product or solve a problem and all of that stuff. I think that's when you kind of go in, and that kicks in a lot of different things where you do user interviews, then you do ideation sessions, validation sessions, and all of that stuff. Once you do that, then you come up with the overall plan, the vision of the product and all of that stuff, and then you present it to the leadership saying, okay, this is what the overall company initiative, department initiative and this product can help us get to that point. And that's when you actually pitch that in and see if everybody likes, or you might have to do 2 or 3 iterations. Once you do that, once you get the funding, and that brings in a new cycle of meetings and all, which have to be laid out to make sure the team falls into place to start that product. So that's for new products, but for the existing products, you have to calibrate everything based on what the strategy and what the leadership alignment is, and make sure you bring everybody in the same page and give them updates and all of that stuff. So I'd say that's how things change as we move on from year to year. Yeah, so man, I think it's been a really good session today. We did cover a lot of ground here, but before we end, maybe I'll ask you. We'll end with a question, right? So, if aspiring PM or a PM who just kind of joined, right? He's in the initial stages, nuanced PM. So, what would be the 2 suggestions which you would give to them? So, if you want to take time to think, I can start, and then I'll move on to you guys. So for me, I'd say the most important things are, we discussed this before. Ask questions. Don't feel, that people will think dumb about you, because PMs cannot be experts in all the areas. So feel free to ask questions. And second one is, if you need help, ask for help, because initially I used to kind of sit and try, hit my head, bang my head to figure things out. But sometimes if you maybe just send a Slack message, someone might have already gone through that and gives you that. So make sure you ask questions and also ask for help. These 2 are the things which I would say are my takeaways as a product manager in my initial days. So what about you, Srinath?
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. First, always learn and be curious, because, there are always a lot of learnings, probably a lot of new things that you would be hearing from customers, or something that you probably are building is not required anymore. So, always be learn and curious, and try to incorporate in your whatever you're trying to build. And second, I would say be open-minded. I think as a PM, you need to be very open-minded, listen, give a chance for others to speak, and you need to be a good listener, because that's when you can go, out of your space, and evaluate without any bias of what other people are saying. It's very important to be open-minded when working as a product manager, because you work with so many people, so everyone probably have a different point of view that you need to respect. So I'll say
Yeah,
those are 2 from my side.
emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yes.
So
And probably third one, which I can say final, is empathy. I think empathy is as well very important when you're working with so many people.
yeah. So what about you, Phani?
The first one is right. Like as a product manager, right? Sit and write. So that's where I think, like, say, have your heads down time, like, be it couple of hours, be it few hours in a week. Sit and write whatever you are thinking. And when you put something on a paper and where you can clearly tell, hey, this is the problem, this is how you want to solve, you can never go wrong. And obviously, you cannot write a document without talking to people, without talking to customers, without looking at data, etc. So there is a lot of background work that you need to do in order to make that happen. But right, that's the biggest suggestion that I could give to product managers. And the second one that I could think of is data. So always focus on data and then make data backed decisions. If you can do that, it's not at all an easy thing to do. But if you can do that, you would be an excellently successful product manager.
Yeah, funny. I think that's a really good point, because I think writing will actually help you communicate in a very better way. Before, when I was not writing things, I was like, okay, throwing things out of people, rambling and all of that stuff. But when you write, you have that structured way of why, what, how, and all of that stuff, so that people can easily follow. So yeah, very, very good point. Yeah.
And for everyone who is watching, right, if you don't know, Sidhu has a newsletter and he posts that every week in terms of different product management topics. You should totally subscribe to that, and he'll add that link in the description.
Thanks for that mention. Yeah, please subscribe. I can add it to the description. But very good description. Sorry, very good discussion here. So we covered a lot of ground, and I think this today's discussion was more from what our experiences were. Right, it was not like something we prepared and all of that stuff. So pretty, deep and a lot of content here. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And for any product managers who's watching, tell us what you think in the comment section as well. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Everything Product.